This is the Yanks Go Yard podcast with Adam Weinrib and Thomas Carannante.
Welcome on into the Yanks Go Yard podcast. I'm Adam Weinrib alongside Thomas Carannante. I think we were hoping the next time we saw you on this beautiful Thursday, after seeing you Monday, we would have another really sizable addition to talk about following the trade deadline. We didn't quite get it. We got names that might impact the team down the stretch. One in particular. We got a name that might be DFA'd by the time we get to September. Always fun when you're making additions at the trade deadline, who you expect to be additions by subtraction by the time the playoff rosters have to be minted. We also lost one player who we're not crying over at all, but has left the bullpen shorthanded in one specific area. In fact, one specific hand. But all in all, it's tough to complain about the Yankees too loudly, considering they've somehow won 5 in a row. The stretch that we said, hey, good luck, enjoy at Boston, at Philly, became a 5-1 stretch through Fenway Park and Citizens Bank Park. Included the most exciting win of the year, potentially the second most exciting win of the year as well. Another top 5, top 10 most exciting win of the year yesterday afternoon, and 2 blowouts of teams that are either NL favorites or tormentors of the New York. I mean, an unbelievable 5-game stretch. Sustainable, all Jazz Chisholm. That's for you all to decide, but at least there's some positivity on this show while we sort out the pros and cons of Brian Cashman's deadline, what he got, what he missed out on, what everyone missed out on, and why he didn't match up with the Tigers, which is probably going to be the focal point of this conversation, regardless of what he actually got. Thank you for joining us. We are live on YouTube every Monday, Thursday, 2 o'clock Eastern. And joining me, as always, to talk about the Yankee sweep and the Phils, to talk about the trade deadline do's, don'ts, what Brian Cashman couldn't force himself to do, what he should have done, and what nobody did, is Thomas Carannante. Thomas, appreciate having you with me, but you got an ad read before I can really appreciate you.
I actually don't. What a day.
What?
There is nothing today, baby.
Great.
No ad read today.
Never mind. Do you want to make up an ad read?
Yeah, what could we make up without getting into any legal trouble?
That's a great question. The answer is
hang out with Adam
nothing.
and Thomas after the podcast?
Yeah.
Here are our addresses. Come on down.
You interested in semi-vintage baseball cards? Well, we both have burgeoning collections. We'd love to talk to you one-on-one offline. Our phone numbers are not advertised, but if you ask us, you can have them, unless you can't.
We'll do our best to make it happen. You know what? It's going to be a long conversation about things that we don't want to talk about. So let's commend the Yankees. 5-1 over the 6-game stretch. I would say, not even arguably, definitively the best way you could have broken out of that awful slump. It stretched to, I believe, 11-24 over 35 games for them. They have now flipped the script, and we talked on Monday. It was like all you had to do was win like 3 other shitty games that were impossible losses over that span, and we're probably not complaining as much. That changes the entire tenor of the conversation, the outlook of everything. But now they sucked us right back in. 5-1 against, look, you run into the Phillies at probably the best time because they're not playing well. Doesn't matter, in my opinion. That's 3 wins. Sweeps are hard enough in baseball. Yankees were at their worst up until the last couple of days. So you could say the teams were at their equal powers at that point. Winning that series in Fenway was absolutely massive, especially the last 2, which we've been complaining about forever. Always getting punked on the nationally televised games. You win the Friday on the locally televised game, and then Fox comes along, get your ass kicked. Sunday Night Baseball comes along, get your ass kicked. They changed the entire narrative this time around. We could trace it back to the vibe shifting after the Jazz Chisholm trade on Saturday afternoon before that night game against the Sox. I think we could all say that has an effect. Locker room reinvigorated, clubhouse excited about changes coming. If the Jazz Chisholm news comes on Tuesday, we're probably feeling a little bit differently, I will say. Mm-hmm. But all in all, even if you do look at the trade deadline, which we're going to dissect and pick apart in a second here, I will give Brian Cashman some credit. Acquired a couple of needs. In my opinion, still not enough. Then again, did not overpay. did not put us in a precarious situation. There are some criticisms on that front, but you look at the relief market. I see a lot of people complaining, why didn't we get Tanner Scott? Why didn't we get one of these other big relievers? Why didn't we, I would say the only move he should have made that he didn't was Andrew Chafin. This team needs a left-handed reliever. He went to Texas for 2 mid-tier pitching prospects. I would have made that deal in an absolute second. Otherwise, you saw the package that was given up for Tanner Scott. You even saw the package that was given up for Jason Adam. Those are 2 good relievers. I don't know if I'm willing to pay that much, especially because those guys are pitching in smaller markets, and we know how more times than not players like that get eaten alive in New York. I don't want to give up 4 prospects for a reliever, even if they're controllable. If it's avoidable, you can do it. Am I happy with the Yankees bullpen? On the flip side, not exactly, but I'd rather be in a position where you can hopefully bank on guys turning it around after a tough stretch. You can hope on some of these injured players coming back and making a semblance of an impact. You can bank on one of these guys from the rotation slotting into the bullpen, giving you meaningful innings from that capacity. So there are the positives for me. You got DJ LeMahieu waking up a bit, Gleyber Torres waking up a bit, Alex Verdugo waking up a bit. Still think there's a problem that all 3 of them are on the roster, but couldn't have had better responses from the collective over these last 6 days, and it deserves recognition because this is it. 2 months left in the season. This is what we got until rosters expand and you want to try some more talented prospects on the expanded roster when the time comes. Jason Dominguez coming back. Don't know what we're going to get out of him. He's been injured for quite a while, has had inconsistent playing time, but it's what we got. It's what we're working with. This is it.
This is, for me, the toughest trade deadline to criticize Brian Cashman for in a long time. And that is not to say that Brian Cashman did a fantastic A+ job at this trade deadline. I think he did a solid B, and I think the avenues for improvement were fairly obvious.
Yes.
But I don't know where the Jazz Chisholm acquisition lands. Ultimately, I don't know if he tails off. I don't know if he gets less comfortable at third as he acclimates, because right now he's playing backyard style, and then when he really has to learn the nuances of the position, he's worse. I don't know if he's fantastic and electric until he has a big moment where he flubs a ball at third, and then everyone goes, oh, right, he's not a third baseman. What the hell happened here? But what I do know now that I didn't know Monday is that the trade deadline is over. Biggest offensive movers at the trade deadline, Jazz Chisholm and Isaac Paredes, it would seem, right? The Yankees got one of the 2 biggest offensive names that changed hands. Lane Thomas, Jorge Soler, I wouldn't say is up there. Like the names that we were dreaming on, the Jonathan Indias, the Yandy Diaz's, not only did they not go to the Yankees, they didn't go to anybody. They didn't move. Nobody got Yandy off the Rays. Nobody got India off the Reds. Yandy, I know the Yankees and Astros were apparently going toe-to-toe for him for a while, but the Yankees could have outbid the Astros, but the Astros also pulled Bryce Matthews, one of their top prospects, who is somebody like a George Lombard caliber. We know the Yankees don't want to offer him. So if Matthews was in that trade, the Astros have Diaz, but they don't. So he wasn't, and I guess he wasn't really available. Jonathan India came out and said, I know the Yankees were after me. I know another team was pursuing me hard. The Reds told me they believe in me and my leadership. They don't want to get rid of me. So Diaz, a mystery. India confessed to everybody, hey, I understand what was happening. The Reds called me in, said they stand by me. I wasn't worried at all about getting dealt. So what can you do? Brian Cashman start digging up dirt on him, George Steinbrenner style, and say his leadership actually isn't that good. I hired a PI to follow Jonathan India around. Now can I have him? Like, what do you want to do there? So tough to criticize him for not getting Diaz in India. Nobody did. Tough to criticize him for not getting an offensive upgrade because he got maybe the biggest that changed hands. And if you don't believe that, a couple games of Jazz Chisholm should have opened your eyes a little bit. So like, even I was skeptical, and then I was like, this is either going to be an immediate massive bust or someone who improves under the spotlight. And then what do we see? It's not going to be every game because he did historically well in his first few games. Nobody has 2 multi-homer games in their first 4 games with a new team. It was like Jazz and a guy in 1910 who did that. So that doesn't happen. But he's going to have games that are worse than this. Going to have games where you go 0 for 5. I hated that. But it's pretty obvious he's not wilting under the pressure. And it's clear that he had a level to go up, that he was not reaching in Miami, that he can maybe reach here. So part of the criticism for Cashman at the deadline, too, is that Jazz happens on Saturday. Yeah. It doesn't happen on Tuesday, which makes Tuesday feel worse. But how long were we complaining to say, hey, get active. Hey, wake this team up. Act early. Wouldn't you want 4 extra games with these trade deadline additions? And then he does that, and you want to criticize him for deadline day being kind of boring when he listened to you and got Jazz Chisholm early. So these are all reasons that I don't think it's fair to criticize Brian Cashman this particular deadline. However, Mark Leiter Jr. is an addition I like.
Yeah.
Swing and miss, top tier. He's a guy that's going to have to beat the metrics and match the metrics. So like his stats don't match the expected stats. He's going to need some positive regression in the next 2 months to be really valuable for the Yankees. But already he's proven his value. Guts, metal, faced insane extra innings jam in his first game against the Philly. I didn't even know he was on the roster yet. Like, I didn't even know he was in town, and he entered the game and saved a tied game on the road in extra innings. Show of hands, how many tied games on the road in the bottom of the 9th or in extras have the Yankees won this season before Mark Leiter Jr.?
0.
And now after. They won an extra innings game on the road. And not only that, an extra innings game on the road that went 11 innings. 12? It went 12.
It went 12, yeah.
It went 12. So they survived the ghost runner 3 times and won that game, which they never do. They took the lead twice. It was only a 1-run lead. They never added on effectively, and they still won that game. Crazy victory. But kudos to Mark Leiter Jr. And then he comes in again yesterday.
Crazy.
Puts traffic on the bases, pitches 3 out of 4 games because he pitched 1 of the previous 2 with the Cubs. I've already seen enough to know that I like him. I don't know how the story ends, but I know I like the move. The disappointment comes from the end of the deadline being Enyel De Los Santos, which Jack Curry live on the broadcast with like a half hour to go before the deadline goes, I actually have another Yankees move. And as we know, he said on Saturday that they were pushing hard to finalize something else after they got Jazz. So Jack Curry has it, and he floated the Rays. So if Jack Curry has it, you're like, it's Diaz or it's Fairbanks. And he's like, the Yankees acquired reliever Enyel De Los Santos. And you're like, a mid-4s. Like, I remember him from Cleveland. He throws hard. He's like the 5th best guy in a really good Cleveland bullpen. Look at his numbers this year. They're just bad. Nobody gets barreled harder than he does. He's in the first percentile of being barreled. So they trade Caleb Ferguson plus. They bring in Enyel De Los Santos to fill a spot. Feels like a right-handed Caleb Ferguson. And that leaves you one lefty shorter than you were before this all started. Yeah. You have Tim Hill as the only lefty in your bullpen. Minor leagues, you got Josh Mastievsky. Love him, but is he the second lefty, a high-leverage lefty in the bullpen entering October? I don't think so. Tim Hill DFA'd by the White Sox. So I like everything Cashman did until the horn. When he brings in De Los Santos, don't like it, not a lefty. When we hear that the Dodgers have gotten Jack Flaherty, and then we hear the excuses made for not getting Jack Flaherty, don't like that either. And we'll go way deeper into that before the end of this show. And then trades he should have made that he didn't make. Look, I could give you a list, but most of those people didn't actually change teams.
Yeah.
The only ones that I feel like, all right, we should have been on that are Chafin, and I'll add Tanner Banks from Chicago, although I think he's a worse pitcher than Chafin, and he cost a better prospect from the Phillies. He cost like a top 15 infielder, so that's not Lombard, not Arias, but one tick below those guys. I'd rather make the Chafin trade, but I would say you have to come away from this deadline with one of those 2 guys. And then I go, okay, A-. Good job.
Yeah.
And then like, obviously Diaz or Flaherty, A+, incredible deadline. But Flaherty is the touch point and is the reason Cashman's going to get graded lower on this than he should. We are not fair to Cashman. We rake Cashman over the coals. Maybe we're fair, but we're not nice. We don't like log on to the podcast and yanksgoyard.com going, I can't wait to do my Cashman defense today. Love that guy. Love his body of work. Love his attitude. But I think energized trade deadline, the Chisholm edition did more than I expected it to immediately. Not every day is going to feel like this, but these 5 have felt pretty great. And yeah, mid Bs, high Bs, mostly because the talent I wanted didn't change hands. But not coming away with a lefty reliever is pretty embarrassing. And then the Flaherty conundrum, we're going to break it down.
Yeah, I have two problems with this. And the first is the fact, well, actually I have three. The first is you go out and you get Jazz on Saturday, right? And that package is not prohibitive. Agustin Ramirez gone, hurts a little bit, but guess what? You have a lot of catching help for the meantime, so that's a loss you can absorb in theory. You would think that's setting you up for bigger moves. So you head into the deadline and then you end up with one reliever who can actually help, but is a right-hander and doesn't really change the complexion of the bullpen a whole lot. I think Mark Leiter Jr. can be used in a multitude of ways that will actually be helpful to Aaron Boone. So I love that. But then you get Enyel De Los Santos, who in my opinion will be DFA'd by the end of this month.
Yeah, we're going to see. He's going to come in. You want to talk about a road extra innings game. There'll be a random game where we need someone in the 11th. And I'll go, okay, let's see what Enyel De Los Santos has. And I'll give up a booming double on the first pitch. And I'll go, oh, okay, well, bye.
And then there is the twofold responses to all of this. So you have the first response, which we caught wind of the Flaherty. And I won't get too deep into this because I know we want to talk about Flaherty. But nonetheless, Cashman always talks about this. He talked about it specifically with Flaherty, and he alluded to it as the kind of prevailing sentiment for the rest of the deadline is that he was unable to match up in value with these other teams.
Yeah.
I don't care about that. You are trying to win a World Series. You have 1 year of Juan Soto that is guaranteed. Anything beyond that is not. It is not about getting the value that you want or you perceive to be successful in order to make a trade. It's about getting the players who are going to get you to October and beyond. It is not about, oh, well, I'm not sure if this prospect package actually equates to 2 months of I don't give a fuck. Nobody cares about the prospects that are 4 years away. I understand you cannot operate like that for every trade. That would be crazy. Dave Dombrowski's the only guy who can do it. Don't know how he can do it, but he does. Does it all the time. For a year like this, we've seen the lack of caution being thrown to the wind since 2018. The Yankees have not made an impact, like standalone impact, undisputed trade deadline acquisition since 2017. And 2017 was more transformative than it was, let's get stars for this. It was more so, let's get gamers, let's up the ante, let's push this shit forward. And it worked. Since 2018, this team has been a few pieces short when you factor in injuries and regressions, and never has it been supplemented properly at the trade deadline. If I was going to say, if I had the pick of any year between 2018 and right now to say, fuck it, trade whoever or the guy that you need, don't care about value, don't care about overpaying, don't care about what the headlines are going to say the next day, it was this trade deadline. We'll get into Flaherty in a second. After that,
we keep teasing it. We keep teasing it like we're going to bring Flaherty in here.
Yeah. He's like, guys, I wish I was a Yankee. Fuck
He's in the waiting room. My back feels like shit. You guys should have overpaid for me. Oh, okay.
Then you have the other Cashman responses, which are, I know you have to say it because it's lip service, but he's asked by WFAN yesterday, which is a tough interview because those guys are wild.
And they're Mets fans. It's Mets fan desk jockeys. Like, okay, fine, here he comes.
So, look, you got to be, you have to be diplomatic there. He was funny. He asked Brandon Tierney to take a drug test because Tierney was saying that he doesn't feel like there's a sense of urgency to win in New York, which I think a lot of people feel. I don't know if I'd say that to Brian Cashman's face, though.
I would say there's a sense of urgency, but not enough. Like there's more than there is in some cities, but not commensurate with the fact that they're the Yankees.
Yeah, I think that sums it up perfectly. Then he gets into the personnel, and he's like, there's not a sense of urgency, blah, blah, blah. And Brian Cashman's like, what are you talking about? We re-signed an MVP 2 years ago. We signed a Cy Young winner back in 2020. We re-signed perennial MVP candidate at the time, DJ LeMahieu. We traded for Juan Soto, and it's like, that, good job. First of all, good job. Thank you for getting those players. Thank you for keeping the team intact. That does not count. Re-signing Aaron Judge needed to happen, or else this team doesn't exist. Signing Garrett Cole in 2020 needed to happen because you want to know why? You didn't sign a pitcher for 6 years before that. That's not pat myself on the back. That's You're the Yankees. You have the money. You have to pay for the highest pitcher because you fucked up for 6 years. Sorry. Trading for Juan Soto, great move. Also, if you don't trade for Juan Soto, this team also doesn't exist. Re-signing DJ LeMahieu, we thank you very much for that. We were on board with it. We supported it at the time. He's been injured for 5 years. You have not righted that wrong. So when we're talking about the past in terms of trade deadline, I don't think countering with, hey, we also did these moves, though, does not equate the kind of argument that we're getting at. And then he goes and he defends his guys. And they're like, oh, what about the bullpen problems? There's obvious issues with the back end of the bullpen. Clay Holmes is our guy. He's an all-star closer, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, yes, he was an all-star closer. He's still a very good relief pitcher. It's evident that October-wise, for someone like Brian Cashman, who probably understands October baseball better than you or I ever will, better than any of the other listeners ever will, you cannot seriously think that having a bullpen anchored by Clay Holmes heading into the playoffs is a good idea at this point after what you've seen. He's been a great transformation project. He has a role in this bullpen. He has star-level qualities. The consistency is not there. The meltdowns are far larger than you can probably compare to most other closers in the league based on the peaks and troughs. So to go into the postseason with that volatility, because you can't change the structure of the bullpen now. Clay Holmes is the closer. There's nothing to do about that. And to kind of deny the fact that there are roster issues and to deny the fact that this team has not been cutthroat at the deadline has definitely taken their foot off the gas pedal in free agency outside of these handful of moves that he's mentioning is more Yankees lies to my face. You can't be serious and tell me that you've been aggressive at the trade deadline the last 5, 6, 7 years. You have not been. J.A. Happ doesn't count. Like Anthony Rizzo, Joey Gallo hybrid, you tried, but it failed, and then you did nothing for the next 3 years, nothing impactful for the next 3 years. So you're not going to convince me that every stone is being, turned in that front office to figure out how you can get the guys in this room when and also coping with the potential prospect capital that you give up in return. Every trade this organization makes, every trade Brian Cashman makes is to minimize risk, and we cannot be acting like that every single year, especially this season. And that's my biggest problem.
Plus, on Clay Holmes, I think he's a talent. I think he's an all-star.
Yes.
He had a 0 ERA through mid to late May. I think it was May 20th. He gave up his first earned run of the year. He walked one batter in almost 14 innings in April. Talented pitcher. Not a closer because of the style of his pitching. If it's working, he's pitching to contact. Not what you want in a one-run game. You'd love him as your 7th inning or 8th inning guy. But even ignoring that, and let's say he is the closer, and let's say he's earned the closer role in perpetuity, Clay Holmes, with his ground balls, whether weakly hit or hard struck, in front of Jazz Chisholm learning third base, a rookie in Ben Rice at first base, or a third baseman in DJ LeMahieu trying to play first base, an injured Anthony Rizzo returning to play first base when he was very poor defensively in the first half, to the point where we were like, is he still suffering from post-concussion after effects? Mm-hmm. And then who's your second baseman? Gleyber Torres and his nightly error. So Clay Holmes in front of an infield like that as your closer is borderline malpractice, because he's your closer. He's going to be coming into one-run games in the 9th. Mm-hmm. Good luck to you if you think you're going to make it through an October run, winning 7-2, 8-4, even 8-6. You're going to be in a 3-2 game in the 9th against the best team in baseball.
Yep.
You're going to have to win, and you've got Clay Holmes and an infield that is learning on the fly at most generous. But Gleyber Torres is
the most experienced one, and he's the worst one.
Off planet Earth right now. And it's leaking onto other parts of the roster. And it's just, I have a text thread with friends every day and we can't believe that it's every day now. They're up 8-2 in the 9th at Fenway on Sunday. Last out of the game, softest hit, most routine ground ball you'll ever see. Guess where it ended up?
Poop pants.
The 14-4 game, the very next day, Philly. Yep. I think it was 12-4 at that point in time. Either way, again, routine grounder to second, drop. It's on the floor.
Turn that double play for whatever reason.
Extra innings or bottom of the ninth. It's Austin Hayes hits a grounder. Ball gets to Torres. He's got not as much time as we maybe thought at first blush, but a great turn. You could turn a game-ending double play here in a one-run game. Instead, double clutches, falls across the bag, throws late to first. Game ends up tied. He somehow corrals a rebound off DJ LeMahieu's body.
That was insane.
And sends the game to extras, which is absurd.
See, but he does shit like that. That's where it's like...
He doesn't have to think about it. That's what
Aaron Boone will say. He'll be like, well, what about that play? And it's like, yes, but it came after 4 bad ones.
And he doesn't have to think about it. He goes ball in air, ball in hand, ball to first base. It's not a ground ball with any anticipation. It's like, oh, God. Okay, good. I'm glad I got that ball. Then yesterday's game. Doesn't get the tag down on a lazy play, lazy steal attempt at second base. And then 6-4, the Phillies are charged. The Phillies have lost. The Phillies are having a 2024 Yankees stretch of losing a significant number of games. They've now, I believe, lost 10 of 14. It might be worse. So they want to win real bad. It goes from 4-0 to 4-3 to 6-3 to 6-4. Hot shot to Gleyber Torres with the runner in scoring position. Olays it. Can't knock it down. No body in front of it. You got to keep it on the infield. He doesn't. 6-5. It just leaks in every day, all parts of the roster. And again, you got a ground ball closer in front of that guy in a playoff moment. Speaking of, guess who overpays and it seems to work out? Dave Dombrowski surrendered 2 helium alert pitching prospects in exchange for Carlos Estevez, who is someone I'd rather have than Tanner Scott. Because Tanner Scott's walks are scary. They could arise at any moment. Yankee fans who followed Aroldis Chapman know what it's like when you have a closer who's electric from the left side. Then he toes the rubber and throws 4 fastballs 3 feet off the plate to start a save opportunity. And you go, we're not winning this game.
Yeah.
Oops. He's not going to find it. It's over. So the time to acquire Tanner Scott was before the season when he was walking the moon in spring training, or last year. The time to acquire Tanner Scott was not now when you had to offer 3 top 5 prospects for him.
Yeah.
So I'm good on that. But Estevez was available. Dave Dombrowski paid the price. Brian Cashman didn't. And we keep threatening to talk about Jack Flaherty. Now's the time. And I will just respond to your, aggravation, Brian Cashman not matching up with a quote about from Brian Hoke about the dealings with the Tigers before we go into this and before we go into the injury problems. Tiger scouts, quote, found the higher levels of the Yankee system either untouchable, Dominguez and Jones. Okay, for a rental, I don't want to trade Jones either.
Yeah.
Or unimpressive. Their judgment. A Jack Flaherty trade would have had to center on lower level prospects. To which I say, that sounds awesome. Go ahead and center it on lower level prospects. I'm mad. I would say lefty reliever, and I call this deadline an unequivocal success. Jack Flaherty, and I call it a home run. Kudos to Brian Cashman for not trading for someone they have injury concerns regarding, if that's really what happened, because Frankie Montas, we do pay the price, and he is injured, but the price on Montas was huge. The price on Flaherty was not. No. And if the price was lower level prospects, then go hit that home run.
I don't get it. You saw the package that went to the Tigers from the Dodgers. Again, a former top prospect from the Yankees in Trey Sweeney, whose bat did not improve despite going to the most hitter-friendly minor league division in all of baseball. So the Tigers were obviously enamored with that enough to take a chance on it. And then the Dodgers traded the third best catcher in their organization, or fourth best catcher. You're telling me the Yankees couldn't have come up with some sort of a package there that might have trumped that in some capacity? I can't believe it. And maybe there is always the possibility. Maybe the Tigers weren't enamored with that. Maybe Brian Cashman pissed off the Tigers front office and they said, we're not fucking dealing with you, so take a hike. All of this is understandable. But on the surface, we have the baseline explanations of the values didn't match up. The Yankees were unwilling to trade the top of the top prospects, both of which things we already know, because we know Brian Cashman is only always looking to match up values from his perspective and not from what the other team is giving up and how much it's improving the Yankees. And we know that they're not trading a big name prospect for a 2-month rental. So until we have more information, we can't really have a definitive stance. But we will sit here and we'll say, well, what about all these other possibilities? What about Andrew Chafin? What about getting in the Carlos Estevez market a little bit early? To me, once again, it seems like the Yankees got a little bit ahead out of what they were doing, which is great. I'm loving the Jazz move. I love his team-centric attitude and behavior. I'll get to that in a second, because after that acquisition, what Gleyber Torres said completely, it's insane how this organization still is not communicating properly. But you go out and you get that lefty bat, improves the lineup, improves the versatility, improves the athleticism. Great. Now you have 3 days in front of you to start making acquisitions. There's nothing made until 5 hours before the deadline. It's Mark Leiter. And then there's virtually nothing done after that. So it was, again, another instance of cramming not a million, but a handful of moves that you legitimately need to make to improve a flawed roster, and nothing comes of it. You look at all these position players that moved, right? Randy Arozarena, fairly underwhelming prospect package. Lane Thomas, gettable. Could have got him, didn't. I don't know. Again, I don't know the negotiations, but these guys were out there. There was again, just another, even the Tommy Edman, Michael Kopech deal with the Dodgers, the Cardinals, and the White Sox. 3-team trade, creativity, thinking outside the box. There's none of that with the Yankees ever.
And we wanted Edman and didn't get him. So, like, are you shocked that we went toe-to-toe with the Dodgers on a target, and the Dodgers got more creative than we did, and somehow basically gave up Miguel Andujar and Miguel Vargas, someone who used to be a top prospect, regressed, fell off the map a little bit, wasn't in their plans, and that's the guy that the White Sox ended up taking away.
Yeah.
For Kopech, and the Dodgers land Edman as well. Yankees wanted this guy. Dodgers wanted this guy. Dodgers got creative, found a way to fit him in, as well as a utility Gold Glover, and the Yankees just go, we'll move on. We'll get Leiter.
Yeah. And that's where I get frustrated, because you can't tell me that there's not a different way of going about it. To me, it's like, what's in front? They're seeing Cashman's looking right here, not looking beyond right here. He's got his little blueprint, and then that's how the trade negotiations end. That's what it feels like. Brian, if you feel differently, if it is different, happy to hear it. But when we see all these other teams figuring out these loopholes to get their hands on players, coming up with more expansive packages, being involved, from a rumor standpoint, in a vast majority of things. I know sometimes the Yankees don't like to get involved because they know, from a reporting aspect, because it drives up the price. But it's just a little bit discouraging. And then you want to talk about the Jazz acquisition, which was the best one of the deadline by far for the Yankees. Could end up being the best one when all is said and done. Would be cool. We'll see how it plays out. But you bring in this guy under the assumption he's going to play second base / center field. And apparently there was no communication based on the responses to the rest of the roster. The rest of the roster being Gleyber Torres, the rest of the roster being perhaps Alex Verdugo. So you keep this trio of Torres, Verdugo, and LeMahieu, who again are turning it around, but were probably the biggest reason this team went on the slide, if not one of the biggest reasons. Gleyber Torres performing poorly for 5 years now. DJ LeMahieu injured for 5 years now. Alex Verdugo, 1 month of good performance, 2.5 months of one of the worst qualified hitters in baseball. So you keep that trio while importing somebody else who's never played a position before that you're now planning for him to play, a very difficult one in third base. And you didn't communicate with your starting second baseman, who I guess you plan to keep this entire time, because we didn't see a single rumor. We didn't hear any speculation about Gleyber Torres being moved outside of us wishing it would happen. So you're planning on keeping Gleyber and either moving him to third base without him knowing, or demoting him to part-time duty, which I don't think you're doing in a contract year to somebody like that, although the Yankees have done scummier stuff than that to other players. And you welcome in a big name acquisition with uncertainty surrounding him. Why are you going to do that? It's hard enough to play here. It's hard enough to have the expectations immediately stamped on you when you arrive. He has the Derek Jeter connection. He has the Aaron Judge seal of approval. He has all of this baggage, whether true or not, I don't know. I also don't care. That follows him from Miami with his habits as a teammate, his interactions with his teammates, his interactions with his coaches. Couldn't give a shit, but it exists. It's out there. So you have all those factors coming into this trade, and then he arrives and he's like, all right, what am I doing? I guess. Thankfully, he's responded in the best imaginable way by hitting the ball well, multiple hustle plays, and taking over at third base and making impressive defensive plays despite never playing the position. But more of this again is just like, what is going on? Is there no organization? Is there no plan? Is this all, flying on the edge of your seat, trying to figure it out as the hours go by leading up to the trade deadline? I don't know, but I don't like that. I think it's unprofessional. I think it's unprofessional for Jazz to come in that situation. I think it's unprofessional for Gleyber Torres. Look, as much as I did not like Gleyber Torres' response to that after Sunday Night Baseball, what do you want him to say? He didn't know. He obviously didn't know. He was not informed of this acquisition. He was not informed any positional changes were coming. So unless he has the biggest pair of brass balls on the planet, and he's telling the front office F you after they agreed for him to switch positions and he decided to go to the media and upstage that, which I really doubt was what happened. There's less and less efficient communication between the front office and the roster, and I don't understand it. I really don't.
No, and not only do I not understand it, but it ends with this mysterious logjam of like Gleyber Torres, a guy that we just got on like 15 minutes ago about how there's a different error every day and it's deeply frustrating. He gives this quote like, I'm a second baseman. Will you play third base? I'm a second baseman. He's being smart. I don't want him to play third, but still, I'm a second baseman. Okay, the guy who leads all second basemen in errors gets to dictate where he, plays. Fantastic. Jazz Chisholm shows up. Hey, wherever you need me, third base, I'll learn third base. And his first 2 games at third base, it looks awesome.
Yeah.
Again, not saying it's going to last forever, but the Gleyber Torres' future beyond this year, if it wasn't clear already, is unbelievably clear now. Not here. We have a second baseman to take over for him. I won't even entertain now. Like, does Jazz at third change the free agency conversations? Do they start looking for a second baseman instead of a third? I'm not even thinking about it. It's been one series. That said, he looks natural. He looks amazing. And at the very least, it's a helpful answer to the question of what happens if you just put athletes on the Yankees? If the Yankees weren't quite so clunky after all, but instead they had players who could move around the field. Versatility doesn't just mean you stick them there and they exist. It means the ability to effectively cover multiple positions. Yeah. But also Jazz has speed, willingness to use that speed, instincts. He's daring. He does not have to hit 4 homers in a 4-game span to be extremely useful to this team. We said before we saw this Philly series play out that even a league average bat is helpful to put around players like Juan Soto and Aaron Judge having ridiculous seasons. Everyone else having non-seasons. So having a 102 OPS plus with speed, instincts on the base paths, defensive versatility, valuable ball player. And I don't think they surrendered anything prohibitive for him. That said, who can wait for Jazz's Yankee Stadium debut at this point? Like tomorrow's game against the Blue Jays, we feel like we're already jaded by Juan Soto.
Blue Jays are down bad too.
It's been like 4 months since we got Juan Soto, and it's already like, man, he like runs out, acknowledges the Dominican fans in the right field stands, is always like waving, throwing them balls. Yeah. We're used to that. Jazz is going to do that too. Whether it's third base, second base, center field, wherever, he is going to embrace this fan base. He's here for 2025. He's here for 2026. It would be nice to put some more pieces around him. It'll be nice to welcome John Birdie back. It would be great if we had a first base solution that doesn't end with Oswaldo Cabrera playing first base in extra innings against the Phillies. What? because they pinch it Giancarlo Stanton for whatever reason for LeMahieu. I know the reason, but it left you with Oswaldo Cabrera at first base. Yeah, the roster's not fixed. It's incomplete. Could be better, but Jazz at his best, I think better than I thought.
I would agree. And we talked about it briefly too. We didn't want initially, I didn't want the acquisition because there were rumors like a week or two before the deadline that the Yankees were talking to the Marlins about him. And I was like, come on, like there's so many other players out there. Again, whether the baggage is real or not, it's there and it's low-hanging fruit for all this media and all this negative attention. And not even just for the Yankees, just for him. He's going to come here feeling an exorbitant amount of pressure, whether it's real or not, and it's going to affect his play. We've seen it happen with so many other players. Early going, it hasn't. He's exceeded and defied, or he's exceeded every expectation and has defied every negative connotation around him so far. The trade deadline just happened so fast, so I was like in and out of the Philly series, but apparently he gave some good post-game interviews. I didn't see him.
The trade deadline's funny. It really makes the game the night of the deadline feel like a fake game.
Yeah, it's like a scrimmage.
And I remember very clearly 2022 when they tore everything apart. Jameson Tyone didn't know that Jordan Montgomery was going. He was like, that's my best friend. Anyway, time to start tonight. The Mariners barraged him. And it kind of felt like, well, scratch that one off. That never happened. But this trade deadline game ended up being one of the most exciting games of the season, probably the grittiest win this team has had all year, except for Trent Grisham down to his final strike at Fenway on Saturday. The two contenders were this week. Yeah. So shout out to the Yankees. That when you're interesting, it's more interesting to cover you.
And it's funny how, and this is me, I might be just a bad guy, but like I wasn't even satisfied with the win because the trade deadline ends and you're like, wow, I know all the problems this team has. One of them is Clay Holmes. One of them is bullpen management. And you have Luke Weaver throw 7 pitches in the 8th inning. And Aaron Boone brings out Clay Holmes for the 9th. Clay Holmes blows it. And you're just like, Luke Weaver was literally designed to at least face the first batter or two in this inning. And Clay Holmes has been a complete coin. He's been a negative coin flip. He's been a 60-40 in the direction of blowing saves at this point. And you're going to bring him in now on the road in a hostile environment against a desperate team, and he blows it. And then the Yankees win, and you're like, well, you just extended 3 extra innings that you didn't need. Thank you for winning, but also, like, this is what we were talking about. This is exactly what we were talking about. The problems with the back end of the bullpen, the questionable management of it all, because there's not enough personnel in there for Aaron Boone to properly make the right calls. And even when there is, he kind of doesn't make the right calls. And I think that was a perfect example of it. But yeah, I don't know if that's just me being a jerk, but that's how I felt. And we forgot one more Jack Flaherty thing, because you made a good point and you should talk about it before we go off about the Montas comparison, because we had discussed, right, or people were talking about, good on Brian Cashman. Or we said it too. We're like, all right, he laid off on a guy that had some injury concerns, didn't like the medicals. Yeah. But then you hear the value matching up in the value aspect of it. And you're like, come on, man, like give up the extra prospect. It doesn't matter. How much value are we talking about? It can't be that much, especially after what we've seen him giving up for. And then you had the legitimate argument out there being like, why would you want to go after someone with medical concerns? This is the Yankees' biggest problem over the years. Every time they acquire somebody, they get injured. Every big name star on this team pulls a hamstring and they're out for 2 months. And I think you put it perfectly. Like, this is not the same as the Frankie Montas acquisition in 2022. Not even close.
Oh, you get temporarily tricked.
Yeah.
Because you're like, well, you criticize Cashman for getting an injured Montas, and they're going to criticize him for backing out of an injured Jack Flaherty. What are you doing? But the reality is twofold. One, we know what Flaherty went for to someone else.
Yes.
And it was the Dodgers' 3rd best catching prospect, like you said, and Trey Sweeney, who we had, which is a fun little pantsing. Like, hey, if we still had Trey Sweeney, would we have Jack Flaherty instead of Victor Gonzalez and Yorbit Vivas, who like either use Vivas or put him in this trade? I don't know. God, big circle, big fun circle. But we know what Flaherty went for. So either there was an injured Jack Flaherty version of this package that the Yankees could have done, because that's not expensive. Yusei Kikuchi goes for an already quality young major leaguer in Joey Loperfido, Blas, who is a borderline top 100 prospect and a really top tier pitching, Chase Hampton, basically, and Will Wagner, who is putting up great numbers in the upper minors and is Billy Wagner's son. So Tyler Hardman, I would say, right? Without having a big league father, but like guy putting up big numbers at AAA, and you read and you're like, oh my gosh, why didn't I know that? TJ Rumfield, like a third piece that's notable, where you'd look at it and be like, woof, even the third piece is pretty good. Crazy. So that's what Kikuchi goes for, and everyone's like, Flaherty's going to go for so much, and then he goes for not that much at all. A guy who was in the futures game.
8 and 22 prospects.
Might as well be Diego Cartaya, who's got more pedigree, and then Trey Sweeney. And by the way, your fun theory that everyone always fluffs up the Dodgers prospects artificially, like that there's this big cabal putting them on pipelines, top 100 or whatever, to help the Dodgers make trades, really got another little piece of evidence this particular deadline, because Tyron Lorenzo and Joral Perez, who were Joral Perez part of the three-way White Sox trade, and Lorenzo was part of the Flaherty package, both were named to the futures game roster this year for the Dodgers. And when that happened, I went, who are either of those people? That's who we're sending to the futures game for the Dodgers vaunted farm system. And it turned out, no, it's a big conspiracy. We put some relatively unknown names on there so the Dodgers could trade them. Okay, I see you. We see you. But anyway, there was either a Flaherty's hurt trade package that was cheaper that Brian Cashman should have cycled back to, or that was the level he was unwilling to match up to, which is even sadder.
Yeah.
Because that level was low. So if you're not willing to match up to that, then you backed out long before injury concerns were you were that concerned about the injury that you wouldn't even go that far. Anyone should have been willing to go that far, even if he is injured. And on Montas,
missed that first half of the season.
What?
He missed the first half of the season that year.
He missed like a month immediately before the deadline.
Yeah.
And there was a year and a half of control attached to him. So you're paying for that year and the next year. The Yankees won that bidding with a top 100 prospect in Waldichuk, a major league starter in Sears, who's still in that rotation, a major league starter in Luis Medina, and Cooper Bowman, and they add Lou Trevino on the other end. So for a year and a half versus 2 months, they pay an exorbitant price for a guy who had just had a public and shoulder versus back too. Lower back tightness got some injections versus my shoulder is a cement mixer and I'm pitching like shit. So Cashman surrenders a massive cadre of prospects and wins the bidding for a player with extra control attached. Flaherty, it's like no risk. Let's say he hurts his back down the stretch and you gave up your 12th and 20th best prospect. All right, bummer, you tried. I think a lot of people would congratulate you for going for it. We're not talking about a year and a half of Flaherty. We're not talking about a UCL sprain. There are so many. I said two differences. There are so many differences, and I'm glad Cashman, learned maybe we shouldn't take injury diagnoses at first blush. Maybe we should dive deeper, and if we're not comfortable, we don't go for it. But the match here wasn't for the Yankees' top prospects. It was a totally reasonable cost, and they should have done it.
Yep, that's all. Go Yankees. 5-1 in the last 6. Can't complain right now. Yep. I'm hoping some of these positive trends persist, although I just, I'd be delusional if I had unwavering confidence in them.
Well, they were the worst team in baseball for a month and a half.
Yeah.
They have the best run differential in MLB.
That's cool.
They have the most wins in MLB. They're tied with the Orioles and Guardians and Phillies. So say what you will, and we'll say plenty more of it. Do I think they're a perfect team? No. They're underperforming their expected win-loss by 2 wins, and I can tell you what 2 wins those were. I can tell you 5 wins they should have had that they don't have.
Yep.
I'm not in love, but it's wild they were able to weather what they did, not just for 2 weeks, not just for a month, and get marginally better at the deadline. Jazz could be more than marginal. Lighter could be deeply effective, but I would say I'm still underwhelmed. and they're basically the best team in baseball. That's
Yeah.
the craziest part about this deadline. They could have blown the doors off. It's wide open. They didn't. They let a lot of teams hang around.
That's what you wanted. You're looking at the AL picture and you're like, I think the Orioles are good. I'm not talking shit on the Orioles.
They're good.
They don't scare me. Their trade deadline moves don't scare me.
Their trade deadline moves were worse.
They were actually like if Brian Cashman's protege left the Yankees to try and trailblaze somewhere else.
Someone tried to talk shit about Eloy Jimenez. It was like, that was a salary dump of a guy who doesn't show up to play in Chicago. Maybe he'll run into a couple, but like, will he even, how many games does he play? 18?
They traded a boatload of prospects for two guys who have 4.5 ERAs. Like, maybe it works. I don't know. On the surface, not scared. Zach Eflin and Trevor Rogers are not going to make me lose any sleep. Astros overpaid for Yusei Kikuchi and then couldn't get the deal done for Yandy Diaz, which would have really pissed us off. But, the Rangers are banking on a lot of guys to return from injury. And you know how that formula works, not usually successful. Mariners did make moves, but I don't know. They don't have the feel. They're a talented team, but again, doesn't scare me. Twins, good, don't scare me. Guardians, good, don't scare me. So if the Yankees had just stepped on one throat en route to the end of this trade deadline, we'd be feeling a lot better. But it's going to take some time for this to further materialize because you have guys coming back from injury who will be welcomed into the picture. There's going to be a big roster crunch at the end of this month, man, and we're going to have to talk about it. But you just like the picture to be a little bit more clear 2 months out until the playoffs. We'll deal with it, though. Again, doing well right now. Can't complain with the recent production and turnaround. So go Yanks, day off today. Enjoy it. Blue Jay series this weekend. Fuck them.
Welcome. I agree. And we'll see the Jays this weekend. We'll see all of you back here at 2:00 on Monday. I'm going to be honest with you. I think the Rays make the playoffs. Am I absurd?
I would take that bet in terms that they will. Yeah.
They're 4.5 back of the Royals right now. They're 55 and 53, and they're getting Springs, Rasmussen, and McClanahan back. And they're already
Caminero should come up, right?
Hmm?
Caminero should be coming up too.
Yeah, so they lose Paredes, they're going to gain one of the top 5 prospects in Major League Baseball. You lose Randy, that's a big loss. But some random faceless guy, Christopher Morel, already has 2 homers in Tampa. I think Tampa gets better, not worse. I think they're more likely to grab a wild card spot than the Royals. I think the Red Sox and Rays are on equal footing, both similarly playoff caliber teams. We'll see who grabs it. But
you heard it here.
Yeah, you heard it here. Only the Rays could author a massive deadline fire sale. And I'm more optimistic about them now than I was. Their Pythagorean record is 49 and 59. Damn. They are 55 and 53. They should be dead like the Blue Jays, and they're not. So we'll probably see them a lot. Luckily, we won't be playing them.
Yeah,
we're done. We're done with the Rays till the playoffs, if at all. So good for us. The Red Sox have them 6 times in September. Keep your eyes peeled. Keep your eyes peeled as well for our show on Monday, 2:00 Eastern, talking about the weekend in ball, talking about roster crunch, I am sure, talking about Ron Marinacio's epic 24-hour trip to Philadelphia and back. We're going to have plenty to cover. I am Adam Weinrib. You can find me on Twitter at Adam Weinrib. Thomas Carannante, where can the people find you?
Folks, I am at Tommy's_takes. We are both at the official Yanks Go Yard Twitter account. That is Yanks. That is what? That is at Yanks Go Yard FS.
It is.
YanksGoYard.com. Plenty of content there for you. Thank you guys for reading. Thanks for following during the trade deadline. We were happy to inform and entertain to the best of our abilities. Please like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. We love it. We love when you guys are here. We love when we have viewers. We love when we have people in the chat. Enjoy the day off. Have yourselves a good weekend. We'll be talking to you again Monday, 2 p.m. Eastern live right here, baby.
Sure will. Shout out to everybody here today. We see you. We appreciate you. Hit subscribe if you haven't. Would love to have you back here on Monday. Tell your friends, hey, Yankees, you should win some more baseball games against the Blue Jays. Could be really fun. And we'll see you on Monday.